Hello everyone, this is Zenman, and welcome to Redstone Tip of the Week, Episode 1. This is going to be a show where I basically teach you something about redstone every week. Alright, let's start off this series by talking about monostable circuits. They are very helpful circuits that you can use, and in my opinion, they're especially useful for dealing with pistons, which is lots of stuff that I'm interested in. I've been doing a lot with pistons over there, as you might be able to see in the distance, but that's really not the point of this tutorial. Alright, so let's start this off first by telling you, of course, what a monostable circuit actually is. So, for those of you who don't know, monostable circuits are basically any circuit where it receives an input. It could be button press, it could be a lever, so it could be a steady output, it could be a pulse, and the output is always going to be a pulse of some sort. It could be any length, it could be the same length as the one you did, but that's not really a monostable circuit because that's the same length, and that's really just a button leading it to redstone. So it'll give you a pulse that can really be any length. It could be 1 tick, it could be 5 million ticks, I guess, if you want, if you're really willing to put that many repeaters down, which I'm not. So I'm going to show you a couple different monostable circuits. We'll start with a very basic one, and then I'll show you some special kinds, and those are a 1 tick generator, a pulse lengthener, and the 2 types of edge triggers. And we'll get into those in a bit. So let's start with a basic monostable circuit. So now the reason why they're called monostable circuits is actually because they really stabilize themselves. They only receive 1 input and then they turn on, stabilize themselves, and turn off. Alright, so here I'm basically making a basic monostable circuit. I said basic twice, but I don't care. Alright, so if you look here, this is basically an RS NOR latch, except if you notice, the same line goes back into the output after I chose 8 ticks of delay. You can make this, and this can make this whatever delay you want it to be. Alright, so this will be your output, and let's try it. So, well, that really isn't the best demonstration, because that's shorter than the actual button press. So let's make it a bit longer than that. 20 ticks should do this trick. Okay, let's try that. So if you notice, that stayed on for 20 ticks, because basically what's happening is it's first activating the input, then after a delay the output gets activated. And that's a basic monostable circuit, as you can see, with only 1 input, turned on, and stabilized itself by turning back off again after whatever delay you choose. Here's 20 ticks. You can make this whatever you want, but in this circuit you really need it to be less than the button press, or no, sorry, more than the button press, which I'm not so exactly so sure how long a button press is. I'll have to experiment with that. Alright, so there's a basic monostable circuit. Now let's get into the special kinds. So let's start with a 1 tick generator. I'm going to show you a basic design here, and I'll show you a stackable design. It's 1 block thick, so you can place them side by side. And alright, so what this is, so let's place a piston right here and use that as our output, and we'll have our button. So what a 1 tick generator does is it basically it just generates a 1 tick pulse. That's all it does. So I'll press this button, and then this torch will only turn on for 1 tick, and you can tell that this repeater is going to go pretty fast. So there you go. As you can see, that torch only turned on for 1 tick. And the reason for that is, first, the torch turns on, or the torch turns off, turning this torch on. So basically it's 1 tick to turn the torch off, and then another tick to turn the torch on. Then after the 3rd tick is when this is going to finish its delay, turning it back off again. So it's only actually going to be on for 1 tick. Alright, now why did I put a piston here? The reason is that 1 tick pulses are very useful in lots of redstone designs, but one of the most popular is that sticky pistons, when given a 1 tick pulse, will not retract the block back. So if you look here, well, it lagged out a bit, so I'll show you that again. There we go. So it came back in, but it left the block out there. And then when we do it again, brings it back in. Now, I'm not so sure why this is. This might be a bug, but my theory is that it takes 1 tick for the piston to extend and 1 tick for the piston to retract. So 1 full piston extension and retraction is going to be 2 ticks. So when it only receives 1 tick, the piston doesn't really know what to do. It pushes out the sand, but then suddenly turns off. So it must, like, the piston head must warp right back to and just go right back in without pulling the sand block with it, or in this case, sandstone. And then by doing it again, it comes back in. And this is helpful for making a T flip-flop. This is and here's a pretty compact T flip-flop design. There is a more compact one, but this isn't a T flip-flop tutorial, so I won't get into that right now. Alright, so got that. As you can see, since it left the block out there, the torch powers the block, turns on the redstone. Press the button again, brings it back, and the redstone is left unpowered. So there's a T flip-flop right there. Okay, so that is a pulse. That's a 1 tick pulse generator. That's the basic version. Now I'm going to show you the stackable. All right, so to make the stackable version, it's basically the same thing except your repeater. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this repeater has to be on 3 ticks. Did I mention that? I'm not really so sure. All right, it's got that. Redstone on the top, and here's our button. So this is basically the same principle. Except down here, the repeater is a block lower than the torch, and they both go to the redstone, or they both go to powering this block, which is where the torch is. Let's put our piston there, and press it, and there's our 1 tick. And to prove that's 1 tick, I'll show you the sandstone thing. And by stackable, I mean you can place these right next to each other, so I could place another one right here. Torch. Whoops, repeater there, and then redstone. Whoops, that's not redstone. Redstone, and I could connect these together and then put my inverter right here. And then I could have another piston right there. So that's on top, and I'm not so sure why you'd want this, but here is, oops, interesting. Oh. It's not going into the block. Alright, let's go with that. There we go. Okay, so my game's a bit laggy when I'm recording, so the button's going in and not coming out until a bit later than it's actually supposed to. Alright, so there is, so that's about it for 1 tick pulse generators. But I will, I'm going to actually leave one here, because I want to show you something that you should be careful about. When making these 1 tick pulse generators, is that when you want to delay the signal, like let's say I want to delay it a tick, and then have this here, and this is a problem I came across when I was coming up with my own design for a triple and quadruple piston extenders. Very big. I can make them much smaller, and they're definitely not the smallest. I just wanted to see if I could figure it out myself, which I did, but I'll show you that in a later video. So basically, oh, forgot the redstone. I always forget that. Okay. So this did lengthen it by 1 tick. However, let's say I was to make this 2 ticks. Now it's when this is 2 ticks, I'll do 4 ticks so that it's a bit easier to see. That it loses the pulse loses 1 tick because it becomes a 4 tick pulse when it goes through the 4 tick repeater. And that's what happens with repeaters. If they ever receive a pulse that's shorter than the delay, it'll extend it to that delay, which is kind of annoying. So if you look here, that pulse is now much longer. So if you wanted a 4 tick delay, you would have to make 4 repeaters at 1 tick. Oh, whoops. Sip it rain. Alright. Toggle downfall takes so long too. And there it goes. Okay, so now this should be 1 tick. Oh yeah, now it's just lag, by the way. So since it goes through 4 repeaters that are 1 tick, it doesn't extend the length of the signal. So that's just something to be careful about when you're dealing with 1 tick pulse generators. Alright, for Alright, so now our next special kind of monostable circuit is going to be pulse lengtheners. They basically lengthen any pulse that they're given to be as long as you want them to. So basically what you do is you have a bunch of blocks. This game has to make it so hard for me. Alright, so this is going to be your output line, and then you have blocks that are spaced one apart. And this is going to be your input right here. Now your delay is going to be set by these repeaters, and they're going to start right here. I'm going to make this the maximum delay that you could do for a setup like this, without extending these and then extending the output, of course. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 repeaters, each at 4 ticks, so that would be 16. So now as you can see, it extended. So basically, like it starts. It's sort of like this is more helpful for like if you really want to do this successfully, you're going to want to put a 1 tick pulse generator at the beginning, because it's going to extend it to the length of the first tick plus the length of your repeaters. So as you can see, this doesn't start turning off until after the button comes back out again. So if you really want the full effect and you want this to be exactly the same, for the length of the repeaters to be exact same as the output length, you're either going to want to subtract the length of your input or hook it up to a monostable circuit and then subtract 1 tick from your thing here. So that is pulse. Oh yeah, and also how they work is it's pretty simple. The repeater, when it's finished powering, will power this block, powering this, and it'll also power this one. When this one's done, it'll power this and then keep this powered, and then it'll keep going through the entire thing, keeping this all powered until the last repeater is gone. So there we go. I just gave it 1 tick, and oops, and it's just the same. Do it again, and there's 16 ticks. Well, technically, I believe that was 17, because like you can't really do a 0 tick pulse unless abusing the smart piston glitch, which used to duplicate sand, but I'm playing in the snapshot at least, and it doesn't work anymore. I like the sand duplicating bug, but again, getting off track. Alright, now our last 2 types of monostable circuits are very similar, and they're called edge triggers. So what edge triggers basically do, they're 1 tick pulse generators, except they only generate a 1 tick pulse when the steady input is either turned on or off. And then there's 2 types of edge triggers. One is called a rising edge trigger, and the other is called a falling edge trigger. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So right now I'm building the rising edge trigger, and what this does is, if you didn't understand what I was saying before, it will generate a 1 tick pulse when it's turned on. However, it won't generate one when it turns off. So it'll only generate one when the steady input, the lever, turns from off to on, and it's called a rising input. That's why it's called a rising edge trigger. So now that's the rising edge trigger. Now let's make a falling edge trigger. All you have to do is go like that. Set this to 1, set this to 2, whereas with the rising edge trigger, it was 4 and 1. So with 1 and 2, oh, and if 4 doesn't work, try 3. So as you can see, this only generated the 1 tick pulse when it turned off. And I find this edge trigger to be extremely helpful when I made my piston extenders. So here's your rising edge trigger and your falling edge trigger. Now I haven't tested this out before, but I'm pretty sure that you can put a rising edge trigger and a falling edge trigger together. And I'm pretty sure you can make a zer-crossing detector. I think they're called. Alright, oops. Oh, and if they're not called edge triggers, I think they're called edge detectors. I'm not so sure. Never really looked into the names. So I'm pretty sure that you can make a zer-crossing detector, which basically will give you will generate 1 pulse, 1 tick pulse once it's either turned on or off. Yep, does it. Alright, so that is also how you make a zero-crossing detector. So whenever the steady input changes, it'll generate a 1 tick pulse, and it's made by combining a rising edge trigger and a falling edge trigger together. So I hope you learned from this tutorial on monostable circuits, and be sure to check next week for next week's tutorial, which I'm still trying to think what that one's going to be on. But for now, see ya.